been a huge week for fans of The Legend of Zelda, and after what's been a bit of a drought, we finally got the announcement of a Nintendo Direct and the new trailer as well for Tears of the Kingdom, giving us a bit more of an insight as to what we can expect. And, you know, some people have taken that differently. Maybe it didn't give them what they were looking for. For me personally, I'm an Uber fan with over optimism, so it was epic for me. I got to enjoy it with family, and I got to enjoy it with friends of this channel, and it's a huge shout out to those people who joined in. That it just made it extra special, and oh God, it was just good to share it with you all. It made it the best day. Look, I wanted to preface that because I'm not a Zelda tuber. I'm a person with a microphone and an internet connection. And this video is not going to be an almighty analysis of everything that's ever happened since the trailer and every little detail frame by frame. I haven't had time to do that. I've had a job. But what I have done is tried to just give you my breakdown of a couple of things in the trailer, but particularly a little bit about the whole scenario, you know, like the direct itself and things happening outside of that. Hopefully to share some insights that you might not have picked up on. And if I have touched on things that are already out there, apologies. I've tried to avoid all that sort of stuff, so I'm spoiler free and I come in with clean eyes and give you my perception. Hopefully that's why you actually watch this channel. But if not, apologies if I cover that detail. Please don't spoil anything for me about other people's videos too. You know, like if Zeltic's covered it, leave it, because I want to watch Zeltic stuff too. We all love Zeltic. Come on. Before I move on though, I just wanted to say a big shout out to those who have been affected by events on the other side of the world. It's pretty tragic out there, and a special shout out to one of my friends, Turkish. Turkish, I hope you're alright, brother, and thoughts and hearts are with you. So the first port of call for me is about the Nintendo Direct itself. And then of course was a huge reveal I didn't expect. The release of all the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance paraphernalia coming via Switch Online. And by that I mean the old games and the old titles, you know. They included things like the Oracle games, which so many people haven't got to play or experience, but a particular highlight is a favourite game of Tiny, who's a supporter of the channel, the Minish Cap. And that's exciting for more reasons than one. Not only is it a beautiful looking top-down 2D Zelda game, but it's also one that includes a lot of story beats and symbology that we see indicating in Tears of the Kingdom. You know, one example being the swirl pattern, which is being associated with the Zonai, but has featured a lot throughout the series. And you see a lot of it here with the Wind Tribe in Diminished Cap. And I think there's more than a few commonalities when you see this spiral tornado wind kind of shape and symbol featuring throughout the Minish Cap, but you see it in Tears of the Kingdom as well. So my recommendation, check that out. I think you'll find some secrets in there yourself. And I know a lot of people watch this channel are very keen on doing theories, so, you know, have a look. You might find something in there that nobody else has picked up. I fully believe that. The other thing that happened, which was right after the trailer, was Nintendo announced information that it was out for pre-order and that there was a special collector's edition and an Amiibo, which had some functionality as well. It's the Link with the arm hold thing. I missed that completely, by the way. I was too busy champing at the bit and overly excited about the trailer. So hopefully you weren't like me and realised that that happened and were able to act on that quickly, or at least appreciate what they had to say. I found out later. I'll leave the trailer stuff to the end because there's a good chance that a lot of that might have been covered already, depending on how other people view it. But certainly what I've picked up is a lot of stuff outside of the Direct, actually. The first thing was, you know, on the Twitter feed with Nintendo, they released a bit of concept art, and in there was this picture of Link. And I'll leave it up to you as to whether you think that looks different to the Link that we see in the trailer or trailers, and whether you think that Link matches up with any of the versions of Link, because it's also debatable whether Link in the trailers has multiple versions. We see different shots of him at different angles, wearing different clothing, hair up, hair down. It's certainly a debatable point as to whether it looks slightly different, but yeah, that version of Link there in the concept art. There was also a version of concept art of the sword. That was interesting for me because it's the sword half-eaten. We see other versions in the trailer later on where you see the malice on the sword, but it's still in its more complete form, albeit with malice on it. And finally was this picture of Zelda, and this was a cracker for me personally because, you know, not only was it the confirmation of Zelda there with the Sheikah Slate, which had been a debatable point as to whether Zelda could be playable or not. She would need maybe to have something like the Sheikah Slate instead of carrying around a typical sword or weapon. But it also is a different version of the Sheikah Slate. It almost looks like a more modern Switch version, if you like. whether that's been upgraded with the help of her Sheikah friends, Robbie, Pura perhaps. But it certainly does lend to that Creed idea of maybe Zelda having a playable element in the game. And before anyone cracks on in the comments, because this seems to always be contentious, but you know, I know people are passionate about the series, but we're talking about Nintendo breaking conventions. Now, I'm not trying to say that you're going to have a playable Zelda and that's it, that's your only choice. What I'm saying is that maybe the solution that Nintendo have found is the ability of giving people an option where you can choose to engage with it or choose not to. It's a way of pleasing people by giving them just options. And I think that's a good compromise. One thing that reinforces that is the description of the game, where they seem to be really focusing on doing your adventure your way. And it just kind of lends credence to that idea. So make of that what you will, but it was an observation nonetheless. The other thing that did for me was tend to indicate, well, where did these pictures come from? And it led me to the Nintendo Japan site. And let's just say, if you're like me, this is where you get a little bit disappointed, because when you Google Nintendo, it takes you to the relative site in your country. Now, being Australia, we like to keep things pretty straight up. So the Australian website for Nintendo, you know, no offense, but it's pretty limited. It doesn't give you a lot. It's like, yep, here's Nintendo, here's Zelda, you can order it, should be right, and have a good day, cobber. But you go to the Japan site and they're a lot more thorough. There's details everywhere and whole sections about the lore and the history. And that's where it really started to get interesting. So let's cover a few of the finds there. First of all, I don't know about you, but I didn't know much about the Amiibo, and here I actually saw not only that the Amiibo had functionality in terms of maybe assistance of items, but also having customization in terms of the glider. You can see here an example for like the Majora's Mask version of Link would actually give you a different Majora's Mask version of the glider, which was pretty cool. So if you didn't see that before, that's something to look forward to. I also found this photo, which I hadn't seen before. It wasn't in the trailer, or I didn't see it anyway, and it seems to show a different view. First of all, you got the version of Link, which is wearing the ancient garb. I'm just going to call him Ancient Link. I'm not saying he is or isn't a different version, but he looks different. So that's what we're going to do. You can also see the tower that was previously hidden in the clouds in the second trailer, which is really interesting because you can see a lot more detail of it top down. Not only is there this cool tower, but just sitting over here, just hanging out, is a dragon. Now, I'll leave it up to your interpretation, because anytime I talk about color, people lose their minds in the comment section, and I'm still having arguments about it today. I give up. But it looks to me like it's a different dragon. And if you tuned into this channel, and that's my opinion, it's a different dragon. If you think it's the same dragon, it looks like Nadra, by the way, but the yellow bit at the front kind of looks different. If you think it's your dragon, that's called your dragon. I don't really care. I'm not here to argue the point, but there's a dragon. I don't care. Dragons. There's also this whole other section when I went in there, and you click on it and it has this animation with the hand symbol that also features in the deluxe edition in the art book. And I thought that was really cool. And when you look at the symbology here, it's kind of split in two halves. The eye is split in two halves. That eye, by the way, it looks like the Sheikah eye, but it's actually got 7 tears coming off it, which is kind of symbolic with the 7 sages and the like. We've talked about this before, but you know, there's this eye with the 7 things. It's flooding down tears, and you know, this bony kind of Ganon hand sitting in the middle was pretty cool. And the split of the eyes tended to indicate to me this duality, and we've talked about it before. You know, the sun and the moon, Amaterasu, Mikaboshi, Yin Yang, Ouroboros turning around. Look, it doesn't matter how you want to slice it. There's this kind of duality, right? We're all seeing that, I think. And that was just sitting there on that logo and being animated, which was super cool. Don't have that on the Australian website, so yay, thanks for that. Also, there was another version of the typical sort of Hyrule symbol with the Triforce there, but in the middle of the Triforce was this circle pattern with the 3 triangles pointing into the middle, and I have not seen that anywhere else so far. It kind of also made me think of people who have the Tetraforce theory. I'm not saying Tetraforce theory is happening, by the way. What I am saying though is I think the Triforce is significant with this game. I've said that a few times, and here I've seen a version of this particular logo with the circle stuff and the 3 bits pointing in. It's different. I've not seen it. I don't know about you. There's also this thing with different runes coming up everywhere. You've probably noticed this. It's in borders and the like as well. It's kind of prominent. But I did notice that if you looked at where it is kind of bordered, it seems to also then when it's in a circle, it's kind of like they're two halves are combining, or it's forming as part of maybe one character. And it was a mind-blowing moment for me, because we've seen people try to interpret the hieroglyphics around the mural at the side, and it occurred to me as well that when people were looking at the trailers, it kind of looked like a Gerudo symbol, but when it was moving, it was like one of the symbols, but it was hard to tell because it seemed to spiral in and out, and then you couldn't make it out. But what if these are actually parts that they're moving in sort of a more three-dimensional or even four-dimensional space, for lack of better words, and it's hard to make out what the symbols are because they're turning and moving. Even across the bottom of the platform that Ganon's on, it seems to actually have the symbols curving around the circular pattern as it spirals down and up. And it just occurred to me it was a really clever way Nintendo could be hiding the language, because it's moving in a three-dimensional space, for example. So you're only ever seeing part of it. Another find for me that I haven't noticed before, and I've looked at this section before, was a version of the Sheikah Slate in the keywords or key items, and you have to take the translation with a pinch of salt, of course, because I'm not that fluid in Japanese, but it seems to mention at the bottom there that there is a mystical stone of the same name once being used to guide a lost hero. And that's unique. I've not heard that in any of the descriptions of the Sheikah Slate so far. Maybe I'm wrong and somebody will pick me up, no doubt, but it seems to indicate to me like that's confirming it being used by another hero in another time or place. And, you know, we talk about the duality here, and certainly in what I picked up in the trailer, there's a lot of suggestion of a different world type scenario, whether it's a different time or a different realm. You know, my example I like to look at there is the Dark Realm. There's kind of a version there that reminds me a lot of A Link to the Past, where you would travel between the light and the dark realm. And the spiral portals tend to be kind of like that as well, and how it worked. But the next two seem innocuous in the way that they are, but they're important due to timing. So on the 9th of February, it was updated to include an adventure guide. Now, neatly compiled for a quick read and go through and what to do in the game. It's kind of like an instruction booklet that was never included with the game to begin with. So not long after that though, on the 10th of February, and this one really blew my mind, is this introduction of a section called The Hyrule You Don't Know. And it says here they're introducing part 1, and you can have a look through it. It's really cool. It's all about the Hebrew region and highlighting places you should go and check out. But particularly that title, The Hyrule You Don't Know, it's like a guide for players to go revisit Hyrule, or maybe visit it if you haven't been there before. Timely, as it's coming out just around the time of the Direct, and it feels like it's almost drawing your attention to certain parts of Hyrule, just to make sure you go and check them out if you haven't done it, because, you know, it might be different in Tears of the Kingdom. It just seemed very distinct to be coming out just around the time of the Direct, and with so much attention on different aspects of the map as well, and what's looking different and what's not. Lastly though, let's do it. We'll move on to the trailer, and again, everyone's probably ripped this apart. I'm just going to highlight some things that I picked up that were pretty interesting. Malice, it seems to have come up. It's been a prediction here in the channel that it was going to be an aggressive calamity unlike we've ever seen, and whether it would leave anything at all. I predicted that I think it would wipe out everything, and that could be what we're looking at, is a situation where we need to stop this Malice from ruining the Hyrule that we know. It certainly looks like that could be a possibility in the trailer, and that just seemed to ring true. But even beyond that, I think it's, if you look at a realms type scenario, it could be doing even further than that. To me, this looks like a Malice that's going to just consume everything, not just Hyrule, but Hyrule now, Hyrule in the past, Hyrule in the future, Hyrule in other realms, the other realms that are existed, all the realms that you might know from your favorite games. It just could be trying to take out everything, because it's just consuming. It's an endless hunger. There's this tornado thing again. It's featured in the trailer. It's been, in the concept art as well, but I'm going to call it the Thunderhead. A friend of mine called it that when we were watching it, and I like that. It reminds me of the Thunderhead from Skyward Sword. But we have this flash of lightning here, and you see it in the background, and you see it later on as well. It seems to be holding back a major part of this puzzle. I mean, definitely in other shots we've seen a lot of the sky islands and blocks and it's leading up and it's all hidden, but this Thunderhead area seems to be holding back something major. Another thing that we see happen a few times is these enemies mining, because not only are they trying to take out every living being in Hyrule, but they don't mind stopping to grab a pickaxe and just get a bit of exercise in. What we do see with the mining later on is they have uncovered this chunk of ore, and in the middle of it is this reddish kind of vein. And I don't know about you, I just got straight up vibes of the crystallized malice from Skyward Sword. And, you know, again, speculating on a theory here, just random, is that why would you want to do that? Well, if you're trying to resurrect the biggest bad that's ever been in its full utility, you would probably want every bit of its being, and the crystallized form of that malice being the purest might represent the purest parts of that being. There's just all these crazy new enemies, and one thing that stood out to me anyway, I could see the coloring on them, and it just reminded me a little bit of tribal type colors and tattooing. You know, we talk about the demon tribe, and again referring to the dark realm, the demon tribe come generally from the dark realm, and it kind of looked to me like the colors as well that you see like a toga thing, and tribalized or at least united in some regimen. Spitballing with a random thing like a Shadow of Mordor type nemesis system, man, that would be insane. There's also a different kind of enemy, and I say this one different, this block type creature. I say it's different because he's got that green sort of energy that's powering it. It reminded me very much of the frog creature. And what's interesting to note is later on Link's driving around on this weird looking 4-wheel utility. I'm going to call it like a harvester type machine, but the wheel hub has that same symbol with the broom tick thing in the middle. To me, it looks like it's representing a clock and a hand, time. And you know, that was common to that frog-like creature as well. So if it's on this vehicle and that's a friendly type material that Link has crafted, it would make sense to me that maybe the frog and indeed maybe this other creature are less of a bad enemy and more of a trial enemy. And that brings back or evokes things that we've talked about with maybe like Zelda 2 type situation, where you've got to beat a trial guardian in order to access a particular upgrade or part of a shrine perhaps, maybe a palace gem or crystal or part of a Triforce. You've got this theme all over where you've got things that were in the world that aren't there now. You know, the shrines and the towers look different, are examples. But also, you know, you've got Link pulling things out of bogs of mud that weren't there in Breath of the Wild. And how do you explain this? How do these things happen? Well, it's either got to be a completely different world or it's got to be a completely different time. And, you know, even down to the last line of lend him your power and this idea of the ancient hero, I just can't help but buck this idea that we are looking at a different point in time. But I also think we could be looking at a different world. And I think it could be plays of both. So again, not saying which one it is, but definitely this idea of things missing in the world that were there, as well as these islands coming into play, the amalgamation and clashing of different realms and different tropes we've seen from other series all seems to be coming into play in this one game. And I suppose I wanted to end on that point because we only know what we can see, and all of this is theory and speculation. Nothing's fact until we've got the game in our hand and we're playing it. And even then, I'd say nothing's fact until you've played the game so long that you've uncovered everything that you possibly can, because you'll always find something new. But Nintendo are storytellers. You know, they're going to hold back things until the game is released, because you don't release a game, if you're a storyteller anyway, let's just say this. If you're a storyteller, you don't give the twist away at the start of the story. You hold that back. So you can guarantee there's going to be big things that are going to come up very much closer to release. And no doubt that'll hold some key surprises that are going to, again, flip what we think we know right on its head. That was my take on a bunch of the things that have happened. I hope you got something out of it. I hope there was something different, unique, and certainly for fans and supporters of the channel, thank you. It's the only reason I make these videos, because it's not my job. I do this for fun, and it's a passion thing. I just want to say thank you, because those comments mean a lot, and you've got no idea how much they actually motivate me to stay up late at night and finish video or bother to do it at all. It's not, as I've said, it's not my job. I do it because I like the series and I like the game. So I just wanted to touch on that because it means a lot. But also a huge thank you to my family. It's been a huge week again, and without my wife, my daughter, and my sister, these are people who make the biggest difference every day in helping me cope with my own anxieties and challenges and doing things. And I certainly wouldn't have done any of these videos without them. And I just wanted to say a special thanks to the people who have joined me on the streaming as well. It's been crazy fun. I get to play Breath of the Wild and do the worst recorded playthrough in YouTube's history of Breath of the Wild. But you guys make it fun, and the chat has always been entertaining. Some great theory stuff in there as well. If you guys get a chance to come along or you want to check it out, just be warned, it is not one where you're going to see skill playthrough. It's kind of tragic but funny. So that's just a highlight for me personally, because it's just great to be playing the game. For everyone out there, just yeah, I hope you had a good week. I hope you enjoyed it, and finally getting some information. I hope you're excited about Tears of the Kingdom. If you want to leave a comment telling me what you're excited about in Tears of the Kingdom. Like what was your highlight? What was the thing that made you squee? As one of the comments said, that made me chuckle. For me, the highlight was sharing it with friends that I've made through doing this. So yeah, that's why I wanted to make this video, because that's why I've kept doing videos, because of the people I've met doing it. And for a last quick Zelda reference, it's a bit kind of like Song of Storms, you know? Who started it? I don't know. I'm a fan, and fans have kept this channel going. So who started it? I don't know. I wouldn't have done it without the fans, and vice versa. Anyway, that was a Zelda gag. I'll leave you on that note. See you next time here on GameSmiths.